few months ago, I went online and ordered my textbooks for classes. A few days later, I arrived home from my job at Apple to find a few different boxes laying on my front porch. When I opened the boxes, I found what was to be my new buddies for the next 15 weeks, stacks of books I had to carry to class, weighing 15 pounds altogether. Packing up my bag with notebooks, pencils, iPad, or laptop, and then those heavy books, I found an incredibly heavy pack to carry to class. All the while I was thinking, isn't there an app for this? That would be so much easier. So I was waiting for my first class, and I opened one of the books to scour the contents. I stand before you today not remembering any of what the text said, but I do remember a chart that mentioned 2012 or 2011 statistical data. And I was thinking, 2012? Wasn't that the year Nicki Minaj became famous? Or when we all told ourselves that there was no need to get an iPhone 5 because our iPhone 3GSs were all working just fine? Kind of made me chuckle. I wanted to pretend I didn't have to read the book, but my wish was thwarted when that little thing called homework assignments came up. So I sat down at my desk, opened the book, and started to read, but the text was indigestible. Here's a passage from my corporate strategy textbook. Corporate parenting refers to the role that a diversified corporation plays when nurturing its component businesses through the provision of top management expertise, discipline control, financial resources, and other generalized resources and capabilities such as long-term planning systems, business development skills, management development processes, and incentive systems. First of all, holy run-on sentence. Does anyone else have a migraine? Or are you just asleep? A little while ago, I turned on my TV to find a news reporter remarking about the class of 2018, or kids that were born around the year 2000. These kids were born into a world with complete technology, and they prefer to use that technology instead of going outside or really doing any other topic because they feel most comfortable that way. Here's a few things that the class of 2018, or kids that were born around the year 2000, have never lived in a world without. Computers have never lacked a CD drive. Broadband internet has always been available, and they've never lived in a world with monthly texting limits, and they don't know this sound. Adolescents don't learn the same way we've learned in the past, and their attention is fleeting at best. They move from device to device, web page to web page, and they multitask. Many in our education system want to refocus kids so that they fit into the old way of textbooks, lectures, and classes. But why? They simply don't learn that way. We need to adapt the teaching system to fit the kids that are moving through it, to satisfy people's thirst for knowledge, and that way it can be quenched. So how do we satisfy this thirst? The answer is personalization. As I stated before, it was originally conceived in 1953 by B.F. Skinner, a psychology professor at Harvard University. And he created a machine that would allow a student to progress through a given curriculum at their own pace. They would get to answer questions and get instant feedback. And what this did is that it allowed them to really have a control in their own learning. And when asked about it in the Harvard Crimson newspaper, Skinner stated, "The student learns quickly to be right. His work is pleasurable. He does not have to force himself to study." Now, I want to change gears a little bit and talk about Minecraft. Yes, Minecraft. For those of you who don't know, Minecraft is a video game where users build structures out of blocks in an online environment. Ethan, a young elementary school student, was given an assignment by his teacher, which is very common in his home state of Texas, and that was to build a model of the Alamo. With his professor's permission and his dad's help, Ethan built that model of the Alamo, complete with explanatory signs. When viewing the fort for the class presentation, the weather over the fort turned to rain, and Ethan remarked, "This is exactly what happened during the Battle of the Alamo. It rained." What this did is that it proved to Ethan's classmates and his teacher that not only had Ethan understood the topic, but he had learned that topic in a way that made sense to him, and he had enjoyed what he learned. Now, personalization of learning can work at all levels of academia, not just elementary school students. As students progress through school and topics become more advanced, the need for challenging and understandable media grows. So how do we, as humans, process information? According to the Institute for Learning Styles, we process and retain information in 7 different pathways. We read, we listen, we touch, we feel, we interact with one another, we use our body movements, we smell and we taste, and we see things visually. Now, as we perceive certain stimuli from our environments, we first store those stimuli in short-term memory. And after repeated exposure, we move those things to our long-term memory so we can truly understand and store them for long-term. Now, I have a very strong visual pathway, and our brains are biologically wired to receive information from certain pathways more easily than others. So when I see a billboard with this picture of a very cute baby and some text on it, I'll immediately remember the picture and forget the text. It isn't until I snap my head around for a second look that I store the text in my long-term memory. So can we use all these 7 pathways of learning in our schools? I think that we can. I think that using current and future technology to examine each individual student's unique learning pathway bias can help us become more educated. The academia world I believe can happen would incorporate each style in its own way. How? At the beginning of the semester, students would take an exploratory exam into their own bias taken on personal technology, such as a tablet. Tablets are great because they can access all the world's information and they won't break your back to do it. As the semester progresses, each student's application would change slightly to fit the learning ways that best suit them, and grades would be determined not by giant exams at the end of the semester, but instead by quizzes and participation of the student over the course of the term. Classes would move from lecture format to in-class discussions, activities, and games, and really involve the student more in what they're learning. Now, what this does for the student is that it gives them the ability to retain information in many different ways and have repeated exposures in ways that make best sense to them. And with all pathways of learning, receiving information, we can retain things better and learn more about our topics. And as Albert Einstein always stated, any fool can know. The point is to understand. Thank you.